Hello, my name is Dr. George Mochocki, and welcome to Introduction to Economics, Chapter 2 of a series we're working on Introduction to Business Organizations. You're taking me either an online class, a face-to-face class, or a hybrid class. This is just a supplement to what we've discussed in the forums. This is a supplement to our discussions. And this is also, by this time, you've already utilized a publisher's interactive software, so you already had first exposure. And this is at the end, you've taken my notes. You have access to my conceptual maps or mind maps, which gives you the second tier that provided to you in a PDF file that you'll find in Blackboard Course Management System with this course. So if you find me on YouTube, enjoy. Remember, this is not going to give you the full, but it gives you a good basic understanding and a good refresher. So look me up. I teach at several community colleges in Illinois, one in Lake County, and one in what do you call it, Cook County. So look me up. All right, so let's go into this. This is a very remember. I'm just going to breeze through this, the reading, the software, the lectures or the forums, the PowerPoints that are provided to you, the students' PowerPoints. All this gives you a good, solid foundation. And then when you take your economic classes, macro or micro, you'll at least understand how economics fits into the overall arena or within what we call business, whether you're a small business, a medium-sized business, or a corporation or multinational, they all have to look at the economics. We'll be discussing macroeconomics, which is the larger picture, and we'll be, worldwide, for lack of a better word, and then we'll be looking at microeconomics, which would be looked at, for the individual countries. Okay? So let's go into economics. We're just going to give a basic definitions. Now remember, follow along with your concept maps. Now I'm going to make this a little bit larger. I made it smaller so you could see the programs. Some students are asking me what programs you utilize. It's called MindJet. It's a business professional program. And it works well. A lot of businesses utilize this. It interacts well with Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office, and the other Microsoft products. Okay, so let's look at economics. So the first thing is just general information, and I've talked about that. So when you're doing your exams or you're studying or you have to take the quiz, your midterm and your final, you at least have it. Study how society employs resources to produce goods and services for consumption amongst various groups of individuals, scarce resources, and distribute them among competing groups. General information about basic economics. Okay, so now we talked a little bit about macro. So the macro is how nations behave. Micro is how concentrations, how people, and organizations. So when you're looking at economics from a business, you'll be doing a feasibility study. Not only are you going to look at what's the economics of the country if you're doing an international venture, or domestic, what's the economic situation within that state? Is it favorable? Even though the country may be in a recession or coming out of a recession, but some areas of the state within a country may be prospering. Same thing even in the state. Illinois may have some issues economically, but certain areas of the state, regions, are doing well. So you have to look at not only the macro, but bring it all down to the micro, so you could see exactly what's going on. When you're making your determination at should I expand my business or should I contract my business, or what opportunities are there. This all has a big reflection on unemployment rate and everything else going out there, because people are unemployed, most likely they can't buy your product, or what we call in business a disposable income. Okay. So what are some resources? And if you look at economics, they talk about the factors of production: land, capital, labor, knowledge, entrepreneurship. Those are the strengths, and that's the strength of a nation. That's also strengths of certain areas. When for lack of a better, Detroit, when the car industry, a lot of the manufacturers moved out there, they had no other. They had the land, they had very little capital, they had labor, but they were geared up for the wrong sector, because automotive went out, so they weren't diversified enough. You see, a lot of areas now are looking and they're saying, here's where our main focus, come to our state, we're strong at this, but we also have a secondary economic, for lack of better words, mechanism, just in case the first one, does not work out well. So you have like different product lines within the state. Okay, so that takes care of my economics. Now you're going to talk about Thomas Malthus. Thomas Malthus is dismal science. Real quickly, we're not going to go through all of this. We already discussed about this, but in the lack of better words, all I'm going to do is, you have this information. I left it open for those of you who want to know more about it, but believe that the rich had most of the wealth, and you can even see that now, and the poor, most of the population's resources would run out. So when I'm looking at Thomas Malthus, he's looking at the dismal science in the real, more of a politically correct definition as there's only so much resources within a country. When I'm talking about natural resources, once you deplete them, they're no longer able to, for lack of better words, reutilize them. You use it, they're gone. So if I only have so much natural resources, and I can't, that's all I have. This is a number. I have to be careful on my population because they're the individuals that are going to be utilizing that resource. So I can't do anything with the resources, because it's just a finite, it's a definite number, but I could control the population. So Thomas Malthus, in the long word, his dismal science was to control, because we're constrained, but this is the resources we have. We have to control the population, because otherwise they'll use up all the resources. That's one way of looking at it. So if you look at China, had the one-child policy, and that basically, when we talk about later on, is that you only allow one child per family, but it doesn't mean you get more children. It's just that the state will not support that, for give you opportunities for college and or schooling or health, everything. You only get one child, even though we know that in the rural areas of China you have multiple children, because that is basically my workforce. But that's the whole thing. So, but now what happens with China is, now that it's a global player, it no longer has to look at the limited resources it has within its own country boundaries, because it could go from other countries. And you see China now, when you look at sovereign wealth, that's what the certain wealth of a country buys into different countries in Africa, because they have oil, buys in other things where they have diamond or rare minerals. Instead of utilizing their own, they now expanded their resource base, so now they could have more people, because they're not limited to their own boundaries. Okay, just remember, that's a dismal science. Now, since we are in the U.S. and we are a capitalistic, and most of the globe look at some capitalistic, so you have Adam Smith. He's the father of economics, and his whole process was, so now Adam Smith looked at it this way. He looked at the market, and the customers will basically decide whether a business is favorable. So Adam Smith's whole theory with the invisible hand, and I'll just go over it, and then there's more in here, I'll just open all this. With the invisible hand is that when an individual is self-directed, that means they have the freedom to do whatever they want, within the limits of the law. They have the ability to keep the profitability, they'll do well. So what Adam Smith, in a nutshell, would say, I am good at what I'm doing. So because I am good, I'm able to decide what products I want to sell, depending on my customer or my market. But I'm also, because I'm effective and efficient, and since I do it well, my business expands. And since my business expands, it means I have to help other individuals to come in and help me, the expansion of my business. Now what I'm doing, I'm helping the economy, because even though the individuals who are working for me, they could buy my product or they could buy my competitor's product, but I'm bringing people back into the economic flow. So they're able to gain, the quality of life and standard of living, and then I could expand. So that's a free market. Where on the dismal science, to say here's so much this thing, the government controls who's doing what. Here is basically the market does the controls. But so if you're looking at a lot of small businesses in with Adam's the theory of Adam Smith, he's saying that as the business supports small business, as they get better, they hire more people, and that's what stimulates the economy, and that's where you have the economic growth. Okay, now resource and development, this overview really quickly, study of how to increase resources. It's all economics, and so I'm looking at resources from a nation, but then also look at resources from individual businesses. I only have so much resources. How do I maximize my resources? I don't want to have 4 cars, since I got 4 engineers or 4 sales individuals, but you only use it half a day. So basically, I could get by with 2 cars, and they share, one in the afternoon, one in the morning, and maybe have 3 cars as a spare in case as contingency in case something happened. So what I did, I eliminated one resources that sat idle and is not making any return on my investment. Okay. And so I'm always looking at how to use my resources to be more effective, and that could be with technology, that could be with different suppliers, ways of creating new goods and services. Okay. Now, the green revolution is like the economic. We're thinking green environment. We know that because of certain processes, certain fuel consumptions, we create certain an environmental footprint. We try to minimize that environmental footprint as part of our economy. We still want to grow, but we want to grow with green. Instead of using fossil fuels, we're using solar panels or energy, or using electric cars. Okay, so but that all helps with the development. So in the overall, we're helping. As the economy is growing, we're also looking and being environmentally conscious of what we do, so we don't pollute the environment, which causes health problems and all different issues that we read about and discussed in the class. Okay, so what's capitalism? Capitalism, basically, there's 4 basic rights, and I'll talk real quickly. I have the right to own my own property, own my own business, and keep the profit. I still pay taxes, but to what extent, we're going to talk later on. The right to freedom to competition and the right to freedom of choice. Those are the basic things, and that's where the free market comes in here. So if I'm looking at the capitalistic free market, is individuals own it, they pay their taxes, but they get to keep their profits. And we'll talk about communism and mixed economic markets out there. So now, part of capitalism is 2 parts in here. You have the supply curve, which basically, as prices go up and I can still keep my costs in check, more people are buying, I'll make more products. That's how I look at it. So if I can raise the price and cover my expenses, I'll make more products. Now, the demand curve is the consumer's view is, I will buy so much depending on what I feel the value of the product is. So if the price is too high and I don't see that whether it's the value, tangible value, or a perception of value, I won't buy the product. So when I take these 2, so businesses, if the price isn't right, I'm not going to make it. I'll just make it little, dependent. But if more customers are coming, I can reduce my price to increase customer demand or consumption of my product. Now, right, so that's the supply curve. Now, the demand curve, I'm only going to pay so much. When the coffee prices go up, hey, I don't need a coffee. I'll get my caffeine from tea, because the tea prices are, because I have a substitute. Now, when the oil and the gasoline prices go up, a lot of times there is no substitute for that, so I'm stuck with the higher prices. We'll talk about the electricity and elastic products down the road. All right, I just wanted to give you a general idea. So between the supply curve, what a business is willing to produce, and the demand curve, what a consumer is willing to buy, we get what we call the market price or the equilibrium price. Okay, so there it is. And your book shows a real nice graph. I didn't put it in here, but it has a nice graph where the 2 intersect, and that's the prices. So if so if you look at it, again, if the prices go up, I'll make more. If the prices and the consumers are too high, I'm going to buy less, and then you're going to find that price. If you go to like a flea market, you could see the prices in there, and it depends on the day what the price fluctuates. So we have some control of what we're going to be charging. Okay, so that's the market price. Now the degree of competition, monopoly. I mean, I'm the only business in town, and even that's not even there. Even with the oil, gasoline driven cars, you now have electric cars, and they're going down. Because as the price is going up for the oil, now the new technology is more favorable. But what's happening now? The oil prices is dropping. Why would I want to buy an electric car versus a gasoline-driven car? Because it costs me more for the electric. That's where you go with the green. Now people are looking at the environment. It says I understand that the cost is there, but in the long run I'm harming the atmosphere or the environment. I was still willing to pay for that electric car. But more people that are going to be utilizing or have a choice electric car, they'll hopefully keep the costs checked between the two of them. Okay, so what are benefits of a free market? It allows for open competition, provides opportunities for poor people to work their way out of poverty. That's the only thing, because I could have a market. If I have a good idea, I can make it. I don't have to give it away to when we talk about like a communist country where it's more government that does the command center. It means they say what you can make, what you can't make. Okay, limitation of free market, inequality of wealth. You already see that. The middle class is kind of dwindling around. That's what the whole election campaign, everything else is going on. Environmental damage. Hey, I don't really care about the environment. I want to keep the cost down because that's what my consumers do. So you have to have some regulations. You have to have social responsible organizations that we'll talk about in chapter 4 coming up here. And it pushes more towards socialism, and people may start to let greed drive them. And that's what you're going to see, where like it or not, human nature is what can I get for myself. And so there has to be some checks and balances. Now we're going to talk about socialism. Is social equality. Socialism is kind of a modification of capitalism, only that when I give back to the society, the government says I tax you more. You still have some freedom. You still have, you could do your business, you could own that, but your tax rate here, I think the U.S. is like 33%. That's for the state, municipal, everything else. And you're going to get some of the countries like France or everything else, maybe like 50, 60%. But it gives the resources back to the constituents of that country in the geographic area, and the government is more involved than in the free market. Free market's the one, the market price is what dictates the pricing and which business stay and which business, if they can't afford the price, what the customers are requesting to pay for it, because they don't know, they can't control their expense size, then they're out of business. Okay. And some basic business needs. Now benefits again is you have social equality, free education. Remember, there's nothing free in life. Nothing free. You're just paying higher taxes. But it's now if you look at the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act, everyone's paying, coming in there, but everyone's paying a fee. Whether the healthy that need insurance right now, or those that are more that need more insurance coverage. But overall, that's what everyone has to pay, so everyone has something has access to health care. So if you got the free child, longer vacation, shorter work weeks, it means you're just paying the taxes. Someone has to pick up that tab. Okay. Now, negative socialism is few incentives for people to take risks, fewer inventions and innovations. Reward is not as great because I'm paying more for taxes as in a capitalist country. And you got brain drain. So the state pays for all of these, what do you call it? Here we go. All of these, bring it over here, it'll be easier for you to see. The state pays for all of these social benefits, but what happens? Once they get all this free and they meet the requirements, The minute they get the opportunity, they leave the country and go to a free market. Why should I pay 60 cents? I mean, for every dollar I make, 60 cents goes back to the government to pay off for everything that I received here. Why should I do that? I've done my, I'll go to the, instead of paying 60%, I'm going to be paying 30%. And it's not only individuals that do that. So you have all your well-trained individuals that's supposed to give back to society that the socialists, gave you all these free health care and education, and now you're looking at what's in it for me, and I leave that country because I could, because I've got the skill sets, and I go someplace else. So that's what they call the brain drain. Okay? And you see companies doing the same thing. Now, in the communist system, you're basically looking at it, owns most of the major production, so they tell you what businesses you could be in, what prices you should charge, and what the goods you should make. Most communist countries, talking about have, so they're the ones directing. It's not the free market. I may not want that color, but this is all we're going to make it. I may not want that size or that pattern. This is what you have offered. So you have limited, and they control. Don't reflect the demand of consumers, which may lead to shortages and everything else. And if you look at something like this, you know what I mean. So it's not effective. It works well. It spreads the wealth, sort of, but it doesn't give what the consumers want. So you have more of one or less of or not enough of the other. Okay, but so what's going to happen? So the two major economic systems are free market and command. So if I have a question on which one will be a command system, that would be the communist system. Now, what I want to go on, because I want to get through this within an hour at least, because it's a lot of information. Now, mixed economies. There's no pure economy except one. North Korea, strictly communist, very controlled, everything else. China is leaning more to market because they're more global. U.S. is leaning more of a socialist. The socialist economies are leaning, they're in between, communism and capitalism. So you have a mixture. There's no, so looking at the global, what works well for that boundary, that country, which way, and the constituents, and depending on the resources, and depending on how active they are, how global they are within the global market. Okay, so a lot of all countries, there's some kind of mixtures, tend towards a mixed economy. So I'll just leave it at that. Communist countries are disappearing. Most of socialist countries are cutting back on social programs, lowering taxes, going more to the communists. Capitalist countries are increasing social programs and moving more towards a socialism. Okay, now gross domestic product. I'll go real quickly with this. Is total value of goods and services. The high U.S. GDP. Company are going through the numbers. Go into the country's gross domestic. You have a gross GNP, gross national. That's where you have the foreign investors in here. Right now, we're looking, if all foreign investment goes in, what's our gross domestic product? And it's total value of goods and services produced in a country in a given year. When the gross domestic product changes, business feels the effect. People aren't buying as much, or they're slowing down. Now, the gross output is a measure of total sales volume of all stages of production. So I'm looking, where do I do it? Because sometimes we may just make we may not make the full product. We just produce a certain component. If I look at steel, we make it here and we sell it there. They do the production and they bring it back to us. So you have to look at what stage of production the gross output is going on. And remember, the GDP is an economic indicator. We'll talk later on when we go into the banking system, how it's utilized. Unemployment rate is another economic indicator. You see the unemployment rates go. It always lags. What do you call it? Between the economic indicators. Because remember, if it's unemployed, it means people aren't buying. So even though business is picking up, companies aren't hiring individuals yet to make sure that is this going to be a short spike in my growth, or is it going to be a long-term sustainability going forward? Okay, and then you have the four, frictional, structural, cyclical, and seasonal. Okay, now inflation rate is basically what's inflation is general rise in prices of goods over time. Disinflation is when prices increasing are slowly. Inflation rate is declining. Deflation, prices are declining because too few dollars are chasing too many goods. And stagnation, as the economy is slowing, but prices are going up. And we discussed this in class. I'm just giving you the basic definitions now. Consumer price index. If I look at consumer price index, it's basically looking at 400 goods. It's a good indicator. Monthly status, that measures the pace of inflation or deflation. It's looking at government computes food, medical. What's it going to cost me? What's the consumer price index for this area, this region? And we talked about how it makes a little difference. If I'm in New York, my CPI may be higher than if I'm in Kentucky or Tennessee. I have fewer, cost of living is cheaper in there. Okay, and the price, producer price index, or the PPI, is basically another indicator. It looks at wholesaler price and change in the pricing. These are indicators what's going on with the economy. Now, the business cycles, periodic prices and falls that occur in economies over time. And there's 4 cycles. Remember, you have the economic boom, you have the recession, 2 or more, you have the depression, and you have the recovery. And when you take economics, to go a little bit more, I just want you to understand from a business perspective, if it's a recession, I'm not going to be expanding. If it's a depression, I'm really down. I'm going for survival. It's a recovery. I see a light at the end of the tunnel. I may start hiring, start expanding, and start looking in the future. So remember, as a business, it depends on what's going on, depending on what I'm doing, because I need to survive, and because our customers are doing the same thing. Okay. Because if I know it's going into a recession, I'm not spending as much. I'm keeping my money to push me through, to make sure I may lose my job, or my hours may be cut. Now, the U.S. government has national deficit. We talked about the amount of money federal government spends beyond what it gathers in taxes. That's a deficit. Our national debt, I think, I shouldn't put it in there. September and 12, and I think the number's a little bit higher. I think it's like 22, 23 now, and to 16, if not more. You check it out, just Google it, you'll be surprised. Whatever, if you get a question, whatever the highest number is, that's where we're at. Okay, a national surplus is national debt would equal over 1 million miles. The moon is okay. So this just gives you some information. We don't have a national surplus or the national debt. That's the whole big decide. You can't always spend. You have to save, or you have to pay off the debt eventually. Okay. Now, the fiscal policy. These are what the government uses. Remember, you're going to have a fiscal policy and a monetary policy. We're going to talk about the monetary policy in Chapter 20 on the banking, if I'm mistaken. So how does the government, the 2 different branches, okay, how do they get money? They tax you and spending. That's how they can control the fiscal policy. So the government has tools: taxation, government spending, federal government efforts to keep the economy stable. If we're going through a recession, you can't tax them more. You got to reduce your spending as a government. You also got to reduce your taxes so people have a higher disposable income. If we're going through an inflation and you're trying to maintain inflation, how does the government? That means I'm going to slow down. There's too much dollars and not enough goods. So what do? I could raise my taxes because now they don't have that disposable income. Okay, the disposable income is slowed down, and the government could increase the spending. So there's more. Remember, government hires a lot of individuals within the economy. So those are the tools they do. Okay, increasing taxes or decreasing taxes. It depends what they want to do to stimulate or stabilize the economy. Okay, with the other ones we talked about the recessions and different cycles on there. Okay, now the monetary, I'll touch real quickly, is the Federal Reserve, and I just talked on recession. It tends to raise the interest rate, what we call the discount rate. It manages the supply of money, the interest rates by the Federal Reserve. Economy is booming. Fed tends to raise. Right now, you see the economies. We have our interest rates almost like real low, so they're trying to raise it. But if I raise it too much, that means people have to pay more for goods and services, or if they're borrowing money, buying new cars and everything else, so they may not buy as much. So it's a fine tune, and we'll talk about that a little bit. The monetary policy when we do the Chapter 20. Remember, now when I'm looking at this, I'm just giving it. This is a real quick overview of what is going on in. I think I gotta go about 100. what's going on for. Let me just 1 second expand it to level 1. Okay, sorry, level 1. Going too quick here. Okay. What we've done today, remember, this course you take in Introduction to Business is a survey course. It basically is like a smorgasbord. You go on and you see every little aspect of what a business has to do to survive. We're now talking economics. From a business perspective, what's going on nationwide is a good indicator, then what's going on locally. So do I expand or I don't expand? So right now, you're looking at businesses, what's happening on what's going through an election that's coming up there. A lot of businesses are doing the status quo. If it's going to be a Democrat in there, okay, most likely the policies will follow along more for the consumers, more and everything else. If it'll be a Republican go on, it'll be more favorable towards the businesses, so maybe it'll be more of an expansion or more benefits for me. So you have to look at the economics. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. From small, larger companies have economic majors, basically doing the forecasting, so they have a general idea, not only in the U.S. but it's globally. Small businesses are looking locally, but they're looking nationally and globally, and gives you a good indication that, hey, maybe I should slow down a little bit. There'll be a higher unemployment rate. You can't buy my product. Maybe I can't raise my prices now because it's very sensitive for what I'm producing. Okay, so in general, we've talked about Adam Smith, Capitalism, Adam Smith, Thomas Malthus, and remember, we're in a global economy. What's happening in China is affecting us. Well, when we don't buy Chinese, they sell a lot of products to us. We're not buying them, so they have a surplus, even though they have their own economy inside as their standard of living and quality of life goes up. They could sustain it for a while, but you still, we're in a global. So anything that happens one way or the other is will affect the economy. You have the lifting of sanctions for Iran. That means there's going to be more oil coming in here, and so what's going to happen is the price of oil is going to go down. There's a surplus of oil now. So, but is that affecting the economy? I'm not. It'd be nice to produce, but people aren't buying. So, everything is tied in. So we're in a global economic. We're at Friedman. Milton Friedman said we're flat. So it affects everything else. So not only you have to look globally, you have to go back down to your domestic, your own country, and then down to your region, and down base to see what other companies are doing. So economics is just a general. Remember, this is just an understanding. So when you see the interest rates going up, you see what they're doing. When you see they're going down, we look at the deficit. Those are all your unemployment rate, or the manufacturing, or the gross domestic product. The consumer price index is a good reflection of inflation. What's the equilibrium price? All this you have to be aware as a business. Even if I'm a hot dog stand owner, or if I'm a medium-sized manufacturer, or I'm a large corporation, domestic corporation, or multinational, economics plays a big factor in how I run my business. And then we're looking at different economies depending on, and most businesses are global. They buy globally or sell their products locally. Again, my name is Dr. George Mochocki, and this is a basic introduction to economics for an intro to business class for business individuals. This is exposure to understanding business as a whole. And so remember, you take macroeconomics, or you take macroeconomics at a community college or the college of your choice. You get your best best value at a community college, because you have high quality of professors that actually are teaching the subject matter and are actually within that discipline at work. So they bring all that to you at affordable cost. All right, so I'll see you in our next chapter. I think it's chapter 3, which will be global. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.